Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the August 15th meeting of the Lower Providence Township Board of Supervisors. If you could please all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can we call the roll, please?
Mr. McFarland,
He is absent.
Mrs. Ekman,
Here.
Mr. Duffy,
Here.
Mr. Knight,
Also absent.
Dr. Sergini.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Prior to this evening's meeting, the board held an executive session, and we discussed legal and personnel matters. All right, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. With the consent agenda, we have minutes and monthly reports and payment of bills and some escrow releases. If someone would like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Questions from the board? Questions from the audience on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, 3-0. Okay, first up for presentations, we will be recognizing our student representative, Annie Zhang. She is going to be leaving us, and she has spent the last year as our student rep on the board, and Supervisor Sorgini will do the honors.
Good evening, Annie. Good evening, everyone. Annie, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors and all the residents of Lower Providence Township, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for your year of service as a student representative. It's wonderful to see young people get involved in our local government. We're very proud of the service that you've provided, and we wish you all the very best moving forward. So thank you very much. I'll give you that. Thank you. And if you'd like to say a couple words.
Of course. Thank you so much, Dr. Sergini, and thank you also to Dawn for your time and guidance to Matt and I, and to all of the members of the board for welcoming Matt and I to these meetings this year. It's truly been an eye-opening year, and it's only solidified my interest in public policy and my drive to give back to this community. To our next student representative who's in the audience, Willie, it might be boring sometimes. You might be hearing people be talking about fencing their yards until 10 p.m. at night, and you've got a math test the next day, and I'm speaking from experience. But don't lose sight of what a gift it is to be able to hear the discussion and planning that's shaping the future of our township. I applied for this position because I wanted to cut through the political noise and get a sense of the day-to-day grind of sustaining a community, from garbage pickup to economic development. And I've learned that it takes a whole building of hardworking staff to do that, so thank you all very much. And even more importantly, I've learned that the work here is just as important to us, really, as what's going on nationally. Because you can apply the principles here that you want to see applied in Congress. It's our responsibility as students and residents to participate in voting and sharing our voices to local officials. Because it's not democracy unless you make it democratic, unless everybody's participating. It's our duty to keep up with what's happening, to study what needs to be changed and what doesn't, and to advocate for these concrete changes. And that doesn't have to start in Harrisburg or DC. It can start right here in this room. I'm so thankful for this opportunity, and I really can't wait to carry on what I've learned in my senior year at Methacton and in my future career. So good luck, Willie, and make the best of it, and thank you all very much.
Well said. Thank you very much, Annie.
Thank you, Annie. That was a wonderful summary. I'm glad you learned a lot. Next up would be our item 2B, and we're going to do an appointment of a new student representative to the board. This year, we only had one applicant, and his name is William Cavallo. And William is here. We just met with him before the meeting. Would someone like to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve William Cavallo as student rep to the board.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions from the board members? Questions from the audience? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, Will, you are now officially our student rep, and you are invited to join us tonight up front if you'd like. Put you on the spot. Welcome. You didn't know you were getting your picture taken, did you? That happens a lot around here, so. Okay, moving on, item 2C. This evening, the township manager is going to give us a second quarter budget update. Don?
Thank you, Mrs. Ekman. Bill's going to pull up the presentation on the screen. I'll just go through briefly where we sit after the second quarter, halfway through the year. We'll go to the first page, shows year-to-date versus budgeted numbers. Revenue for this year, we brought in, and this is general fund, we brought in $6.3 million compared to 5.7 last year. So we're seeing a significant increase this year in revenues. Expenditures are pretty much in line with what we experienced last year, so we're maintaining the same level of expenditures. I should note that the revenues, they're cyclical as we go through the year. Generally, we see a slowdown in revenues that we receive during the summer months. After the first quarter, we experience a significant amount of our revenues come in with real estate taxes, earned income taxes. Then it kind of slows down, and then we'll see another push towards the end of the year with our revenue generation. But as I noted back when we did the first quarter presentation, we did experience a one-time significant revenue generated through our earned income tax, where there was a resident who received a rather large bonus, and we received a significant amount of earned income taxes because of that. So it's a one-time hit. We can't expect that to happen every year, but it's nice to see when it does happen. So we will certainly accept that and use that. So moving on to the next highlight are the revenues, and I broke them down into a little more detail. So as you can see, as I mentioned, the real estate taxes, we've already received 93% of what we budgeted. And that's normal. That's normal in every year. We're right on target. We're where we should be. The earned income tax, we're already at over 62% of what we budgeted. And again, that's because of that one-time hit we received that helped a lot. So that put us over the 55%, which is where we're normally at this time of year. Real estate transfer tax, we're also showing more than expected at nearly 70% of what we budgeted. That's thankful to a couple of the large properties down in the business park changed hands this year, were sold. So we were able to experience a significant amount of real estate transfer tax revenues. Again, we can't rely on those every year, but when they do happen, it's showing the positive economic development that we're seeing overall in the township. So when you see large properties in the business park change hands being sold, it's because they're worth more. And the value in those properties we're starting to see increase. So that's a good sign. It's a good sign that we see activity down there. Inspection fees are at almost 76%. As you can tell, we have a lot of development going on in the township, from Providence Place out in the west end by the bridge to Lidl being developed in the east end. You see activity at the Dunkin' Donuts is going to be built now in the east end, and as well as the townhouses that are going on out by the bridge as well. So we have a lot of development taking place in the township. So with that comes a significant amount of inspection fees that we receive. And then our local services tax. What that is that's a tax on every worker in the township. And that's right where it should be, at about 52%. We should be at about 50% at half the year. So we're right in line where we should be budget-wise for that. And again, that's strong as well, in that we're seeing a lot of new businesses open up in the township. With new businesses come employees. With new employees comes local services tax revenues that are generated. So it's all helping the budget, the productivity that we're seeing, the development productivity that we're seeing in the township. So, and finally, just some expenditure highlights, and these are primarily capital expenditures, and these I believe I discussed mostly during the first quarter review. Snow removal, we've already spent 86% of the overtime, 85% of the supplies, which most of that is the salt that we use. The remainder of that will probably be spent, hopefully not, but during December, if we get any snowstorms before the end of the year. Again, hopefully not. We can get through the year without any. Our radio equipment, and this is the fourth of 5 annual payments that we make for our police radios. And we went through a county program there where they were financed over 5 years, and we didn't have to pay any interest. This is just for the principal cost of those radios. And then we also purchased 2 police cars already in 2019. So overall, as you can see, expenditure-wise, we're right on target where we should be. Revenues-wise, we're looking better than expected. We still have another 6 months to go through, but that's a good sign. That's what you want to see when you get halfway through the year. These are the numbers you want to see. So, as we start now to work on the 2020 budget, we'll start to look at these numbers and project them out through the end of the year to give us ideas of what we can anticipate as we move into next year's budget.
Thank you, Don. Does anybody have, board members have questions for Don? Questions from the audience about this update? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Don, for that. We have item 3A on the agenda. This is a consideration of a notice of violation appeal. And Mike Merzinski, I believe you have the background on that item.
Good evening, and thank you. Yes, a notice of violation was issued to a resident at 46 Arrowhead Circle, Joanne Angelo. This was relative to some work that she had done on the rear yard of her property, which caused the diversion of water onto a neighboring property. We tried to work things through. Unfortunately, we're not able to get resolution beyond up to a point where we needed to issue a notice of violation. The violation specifically has to do with our Chapter 129 Stormwater Ordinance, which is basically and specifically saying that you can't change the grading of your property from the natural courses within 5 feet of your property line. And so I guess this, at least in this current instance, started back in October when I was alerted to the problem from a neighboring property owner and about water that was being diverted into the yard by this planted area and causing a detrimental situation in the rear corner of this person's property. Again, we tried to get it resolved. We were not able to get a cooperative way. We are still seeking cooperation between the neighbors. Ideally, that's what we'd always like. I mean, taking it into a legal situation, which would be the next step, doesn't get the situation addressed. But when the violation was issued, Ms. Angelo decided to appeal it, and so she is here to discuss the situation with you this evening.
Thank you, Mike. Ms. Angelo, would you like to come forward and, is she here, Mike?
Oops. I've not met her personally, so I don't
Okay.
recognize her, so I
in
don't
the
see her.
emails.
She did indicate that she would be here.
Okay. Do we have any photos of the,
Yes, we do.
that'd be helpful.
So
Yeah,
was
should
that a no? Mrs. Angelo, you're not here? Are any neighbors here? Good.
Okay. All right, so can you? Yes, please. There you go. Yeah, can you put that up, please? Okay. This is the specific situation. I have a bigger picture that'll help to give you some context, but the property line is approximately a foot to 2 feet from to the inside, to our side of the planted situation there. The back property line is just to the left side of that picture. Basically, the general grade of the properties come off the street, way off to our right. The natural design swale would be for the water to run pretty much down the property line and off to the left-hand side of this picture. What has happened is that because of the water's not allowed to flow also along to the east and west, if you will, to the northwest and southeast, because of this berm, it's basically causing this detrimental situation here in the quarter of the property to the west side of that. And so the concern specifically is that this planter has changed the grade from the natural flow that would keep the water running this way and then down along the side, and causing obviously the lack of use of this part of the property. Oh, can you bring up the other? Yeah. This isn't a great photo, but I can try to help. This is really occurring right along in this area here. Just to give you some context, the water, again, is naturally designed to the degree that things were designed back in the 70s when these houses were built and pushed this way down the hill. But because this one to the right here. Yeah, just in this. This is the area that's impacted.
Could I ask the neighbors to come up? Would you mind coming up to the podium? Could you just tell us your names and address, please, for the record?
Sasha Mal, 44 Arrowhead Circle.
John Mao.
Good evening. Okay, the situation you're experiencing now, did it exist before the berm? What were the conditions out in the yard?
So we have not had this water standing in our yard before the berm. There was a grate and a drain installed in her driveway that has a pipe underground running to the top of the berm. And that pipe is pointed to the left of the berm, which is our side of the yard.
So she installed a pipe that took stormwater off the impervious surface to the back of the property.
Yes,
And
that's
it's draining
correct.
to the-
Everything, I'm sorry.
When was that pipe installed?
I don't know exactly when it was installed. Do you want to?
The pipe was installed prior to the berm, so it always had been damp back there.
Okay.
I actually had installed dry wells back there to try to remove the surface water and allow it to slowly drain as it's supposed to. But once you put the berm in there, that's when it created the standing water back there.
Okay.
And I'm assuming you're on the low side of the property.
Yes.
Mike, your recommendation is that if the berm was halfway removed, that this would alleviate the blockage of the direction of the drainage?
Yes, it would certainly bring it into compliance, but more to the importance of this is that, yes, it would help the water to flow down and over. Now, without having Ms. Angelo here, I don't have her side of it, but DeMoul's had indicated that they had reached out to them and were willing to work together to restore the drainage along the property line and also down to the right in this picture to help get the water back flowing to the way it was designed to the best of our knowledge.
So, Mike, we have an email from Ms. Angelo in our packets from July 24th saying that she wants to be at the meeting, discuss it, and to confirm the date and time. Did you respond to that, confirming the date and time with her?
I did.
Okay, so she was on notice about this email, or
That's
about
correct.
this meeting? All right. Can we rule an appeal without her being here?
Yes. I mean, if she had noticed, but, Mike, this is an easement on a plan that,
There's no easement involved.
well, it's on a plan, though, that shows this as a drainage swale? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. But what was out there was a drainage swale?
Yes.
Okay. And this water's just being pushed from one property to the other because of the berm?
Correct.
The natural flow would have taken it through the common boundary line and then down into the wooded area? Is that the way it flows?
To be quite honest, the natural flow has been disrupted a little bit by the property owners behind us building up.
Oh, okay.
Then the natural flow would, yes, go down, and you see Mr. Weagle's pool on the right-hand side there. It would go between that property line as best it could.
Mm-hmm.
So it did naturally flow that way prior to her putting the berm in there.
Right, now it's
But
blocked.
she ran it the whole way to the end of the property line, so the water can't escape.
Right. Okay.
Just to add it, I did approach her about, putting a swell towards the back, and that I would do all the labor. Actually, Steve and I would do all the labor but she didn't want to do that.
So, I mean, if she's had notice, she's not here, her appeal was what? To let her continue to block the stormwater and push it onto the neighbor's property? I mean, was that her request?
I believe would be to withdraw the violation. I think that was the initial thing. There's a history that she probably wanted to bring in. I mean, there's been issues probably since '04, but I think specifically tonight the issue was to get rid of the notice of violation.
Okay. Well, I mean, if the board denies the appeal, the next step is, which you don't have to take immediately, filing a district justice court citation. You can hold off on that and try to continue to work, but at least this goes away, this part of it, right?
Understood.
Yeah.
My only concern is I don't know how fast or how quickly this can be resolved, but with the sitting water, we're just concerned with the mosquitoes because the water sits there for days at times.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't do anything about it. And it's also killing the landscaping around there and the grass.
Well, the only thing that's going to happen tonight is there's a violation notice, she's filed an appeal, it comes to this board, she's not here, she got notice, the board can vote on that, and then the next step is filing a complaint in district justice court, which is not going to solve your problem either. That's a fine. But, I mean, if she wants to go that route, then that's really the only option after tonight.
Or we'll involve an attorney. I think we can do that.
What
Or
I mean-
we'll involve an
Yeah,
attorney.
it is, to a large extent, a private property line problem between you and your neighbor, so, but sounds like Mike's been trying to mediate this, and, my recommendation is for the board to just to vote on it tonight and get it out in front of this board, and then hopefully it gets resolved. I mean, we're talking about not a huge amount of work to remedy this, right?
Correct.
No, I mean, we're willing to work with her, but she
Right.
doesn't want to work with us. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a consideration in front of us. How would the board like to proceed?
I'll make a motion to deny the notice of, the appeal of the notice of violation.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions from board members? Any questions from the audience on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, consent by saying aye. Opposed? None? Okay, motion carried. Okay, item 3B will be a conditional use hearing for the address at 9 South Park Avenue. And our solicitor's going to handle this. You need a motion to go into the hearing?
No, it's been advertised. But I do need the applicant here, and I think they're out in the hallway. So we're going to need to bring them in. This is 9 South Park. Mr. Koval is the attorney who is representing them. So while the applicant is getting set up here, I'll just give a brief explanation as to where we're going with this. This is a conditional use hearing, which is like a zoning hearing board hearing, but it's heard by the Board of Supervisors. The property that's involved is at 9 South Park Avenue. The applicants are Robert and Anne Marie Gambone. And the proposal that we'll hear some testimony about tonight is part of a larger proposal for this property. The property is being proposed by Mr. Gambone to be converted to a flooring, let me find it, American Tile and Marble Inc., which will install flooring and flooring products at the site. So there'll be a commercial operation on the bottom floor, and this proposal tonight is to add 2 apartments on top of that. And in the Ridge Park Business District, you're permitted to do that, have a mixed use like that, commercial on the bottom, residential on top. However, you have to have conditional use approval by this board to have those combined uses. So what is proposed, really, this purpose of this hearing is to hear about the 2 apartments. And assuming this moves beyond tonight, there will be a land development plan that will be filed for the whole project, all of the uses, the commercial uses and the 2 residential uses, and that'll go through the Planning Commission and be reviewed for things like stormwater and traffic and parking and sewer and whatever else would come up in the normal course of a Planning Commission meeting. Then it'll come back to the Board of Supervisors for a final land development plan. So tonight is a quasi-judicial hearing. These are the 3 judges to my left. They're going to make a decision on this tonight, and I guess the first question I have is there anyone here, any neighbors, adjacent property owners that want to participate in this hearing? There'll be an opportunity for public comment or questions, but this is a hearing, so I don't see anyone coming forward. Let me just do one more thing. This is an advertised public hearing. This was advertised on August 1st and August 8th for the hearing tonight. And the property is 9 South Park Avenue. It's in the PBD Ridge Park Business District, zoning district, and the proposal tonight is for the 2 apartments. The applicant is here, Mr. Gambone, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Koval, do you want to introduce yourself and then begin?
Yes, thank you. I'm Daniel Koval, I represent the applicant. Should I go over to the microphone?
Yes, please. Before you start though, let's have, if Mr. Gambone's going to speak about this, whoever you're going to have testify, let's have them sworn in by the,
I also have Mr. Mark Conville, who's our architect.
okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. I think I could almost rest on what you just said, but.
Just trying to make it easier
Yeah,
for you.
you're correct. What we're here for today is a conditional use, and in a certain sense, we're putting the cart before the horse because we have to come back for land development. We were here a couple of weeks ago, and we went, asked for a waiver, and we didn't get it, but we're happy to come back for land development. So today, we're talking about an application for a conditional use to locate 2 apartments above an existing building. And these are the photographs. So, and I'll explain this, I'll make it a little bit quicker. This is the property. This is Park Avenue. This is 2nd Street. Houses, residential houses are across the street. Thank you. And, great, thanks. So what we propose to do is to basically put a 2nd floor on this square. And in that 2nd floor, or on that 2nd floor, which would be the same dimensions as the existing building, will be 2 750 square foot or 700 square foot apartments. And that's basically it. The property extends, as I'm showing you here, all the way, and it's basically blacktop. So as part of the land development, we're going to show a little bit more detail on the plan, how access is going to be, but for the purposes today, we're really talking about a 2nd floor here. Ultimately, we propose to build also a warehouse structure in that area, and that will be part of Mr. Gambone's business. But that's the summary of the application. So I would ask Mr. Conville first to testify and go from there. I also have our exhibit packet. So could you put up, please, the site plan? I have it also on the board here. Do it either way.
Let me just identify these exhibits. These are applicants' exhibits. A1 is a plan by RHC Design LLC dated April 4th, 2019, which depicts the 2nd floor plan for the apartments. A2 is a plan by RHC Design LLC dated 4/4/19, which depicts proposed renovations and additions for Robert T. Gambone. A3 is a plan prepared by RHC Design LLC dated April 4th, 2019. Which shows the elevations of the proposed building. A4 is a tentative sketch plan prepared by RKW Engineers with a date of 6/17/19. A5 are a set of photos, A through E. And A6 is a letter from Mike Brzezinski, dated May 21st, 2019, to Daniel Koval. So they're the A1 through A6 identified.
Thank you. I'll call Mark Conville. Mr. Conville, would you tell the board your name and your business address?
Mark Conville, a registered architect. Business address is 218 West Broad Street, Montpelier.
Okay, and you mentioned you're a registered architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
I am a registered,
How long have you been a registered architect?
15 years.
All right, and did you take part in the preparation of the exhibits that we've seen today, and particularly the architectural plans A1, A2, and A3 by RHC
Yes,
Design?
Yeah, I'm the record architect on the project.
Okay, so you're familiar with those plans? And you're also familiar with the tentative sketch plan by RKW Engineers, that's A4?
Yes.
Okay, and is RKW working with your company to
Yes,
to do this
they're the
work?
civil engineer that's on the project.
Now, can you give the board briefly a description of the site and for the record, just the size of the property and the dimensions, even though they're shown on the plan?
So the size of the property is 19,772 square feet, as we talked about, is this lot here. And the width is about 84, depth about 300 square feet, or 300 feet.
The property is pretty much covered with blacktop, is that correct, or
That is
buildings? There's some grass area in the front. Now, what are the frontages? What streets front or adjoin this property?
Park Avenue and Second Street are the major frontages.
Okay, so would it be fair to say that the main, major frontage of this property is along Second Street?
Yes,
Okay, and that's where the access is also, is that correct?
correct.
Right, now, and by the way, the plan shows a sidewalk located along Park Avenue to be constructed.
Yeah.
What are the existing improvements on the property?
Well, the existing, we have an existing structure with an addition that was put on. Other than that, we have blacktop, and that's pretty much the components of the existing property.
So on Exhibit A4, the depiction on the left are the existing conditions, is that correct?
Sorry.
Now, I'm going to ask you to look at your architectural plan and mark as A1. This may be a little bit better to see on the overhead. With respect to A1, what does that plan show?
The plan is showing the first floor, which is the existing structure, and the second floor, which is the proposed structure that is going to house 2 apartments. And
Okay, so this shows what's there now and what's proposed to be, is that correct?
that's correct.
All right, so when we're looking at this area, as I'm depicting on Exhibit A1, that would correlate to the existing, rear of the existing building on A4, the site plan, is that
Yeah,
correct?
that is correct.
All right. Now, concerning please describe what you propose to do here with respect to building these apartments.
So the existing building is going to be used as commercial space, both the existing building and the later addition. And
So the court reporter can,
okay, so the existing building consists of the display area that's shown on the lower level, or lower half of the plan, and that does consist of all the existing conditions. The second floor is the area that we're going to build 2 new apartments. The apartments themselves are going to be built right on top of the existing space, not to go beyond the extents, with exception to the stair in order to gain egress.
So I'm outlining an area on Exhibit A1 that says display space is on the right of the bottom side of the lower drawing. Is that the existing front of the property, the area that's a renovated house in essence, correct?
Yes,
All right, and the second floor of that space is what I'm outlining on the right side of A1 now, is that
and
correct?
that's correct, and that's
Okay.
all existing.
Okay, so that's going to change inside but not outside, right?
Correct.
Okay. But what you're proposing to do then is to just basically build these apartments on top of the area that's shown as display space on Exhibit A1. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. How tall will this building be? How many
That-
stories?
Well, it's only going to be 2 stories.
Okay, so it will be less than 35 feet in height.
That is correct.
All right. Now, the apartments that are proposed, how will access be, how will the tenants access those apartments?
From the backside, that stair unit is going to be the ingress and egress for both of those units.
Okay, so what's proposed is to build basically a stairway to the northeast of the existing building, is that correct?
That is
Okay,
correct.
can you point that out on Exhibit A4, the plan? Okay, and how large is that area in square footage?
48 square feet.
Okay, so that would be the only addition or the only construction outside of the building envelope of the existing building, is that
is
correct?
Mhm.
All right, then how would people how will the tenants have access to that area?
That is, they're going to be able to park within here and go through a breezeway to get to that area.
Okay, so they would park in the front along Second
The front.
Street and then walk behind the building to access the stairs, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. The apartments that are depicted, how large is the total area of the improvement?
1,500 square feet,
Okay, and how large are each of the apartments?
750 square feet apiece.
Okay, each of the apartments, and it's hard, it's a little bit blurry on that.
Yeah, so each apartment it's a 1-bedroom apartment, probably to house 1 to 2 people. It includes a bedroom, a living space, a bathroom, a kitchen area, and essentially constitutes a 1-bedroom apartment.
They have washer and dryer in the
Yes,
apartments?
yes.
Okay. The apartments have all utilities, air conditioned, heating, and so forth, correct?
That is correct,
This property is served by public water and sewer, correct?
and that is correct as well.
Can you put up A2, please? I'm going to ask you to look at the drawing that's been marked as A2. Is that a drawing that your firm prepared?
Yes, it is.
What does that drawing show?
So the drawing shows the top left corner is the right side elevation. That is indicating the building on the far left is the existing 2-story building. Towards the back of that, the first level is the existing structure. And what we are proposing is that those 2 apartments are going to be built directly on top of that, and they're indicated with siding and shingles to match the existing facades.
Okay, so the roof line would not be higher than the existing roof of the existing building?
No,
Front
as
building.
indicated, it is lower.
Okay, in the area that we're showing here, that's the stairway?
That is the stairway.
Okay, you're not proposing an elevator, are you?
No,
And the rendering that's on the bottom, that's a rendering from the Second Street side?
that is correct.
Okay, so that's the side that, the top is from what you would see from perhaps Park Avenue or Ridge Pike, correct?
Mhm.
And the bottom is from the Second Street side?
Yes.
Okay, and this is the breezeway I'm pointing out that you referenced?
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of constructing the building, could you please turn to A3, thank you. In terms of constructing the building, would the materials match the existing, and would the building be renovated and cleaned up?
Yeah. We propose to take the structure and try to give it a new, revitalize it.
Okay, so the first level of the rear part that we're talking about, that will be a display space or a display area for the business, correct?
That is correct.
All right, and then I'm going to ask you to look at Exhibit A3. What does that exhibit depict?
Well, the exhibit's depicting what we are proposing as a future building that's going to be placed on the backside of the buildings we're talking about, and that would be used for the business as well.
Okay, so the area that I'm pointing out, that's the proposed warehouse building that we're not talking about today, but we'll be talking about it in the future. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And again, this, and we're looking at the center drawing, that depicts an elevation of the property from the Second Avenue side, again, showing the breezeway and the existing structure. Is that correct, with the proposed second story?
That is correct.
All right. Do you anticipate that there'll be any significant impact on traffic volume as a result of this proposal?
No, from what the client is, Mr. Gambone is stating, the parking that we're introducing into the back is not going to be used on a regular basis. It's more for worker traffic. It's not that, although there's displays, any patron that's going to come to the space are going to come in dribs and drabs based on appointments.
Well, my question is more with respect to these two apartments. You're talking.
Oh, well, the two apartments, we're saying two people per unit. I mean, the overall parking will be at a minimum.
Would you anticipate more than two people in any unit?
No,
Perhaps one person in the unit?
most likely,
The code requirement is 2 cars per unit, correct?
yes.
2 parking spaces on the side per unit. All right, and I'm going to go over the ordinance requirements. With respect to stormwater, that will come into land development plan, but would there be any undue or extraordinary increase in stormwater as a result of this proposal?
No, if anything, it's going to be less than what we have because we're going to be reducing the amount of impervious.
Okay, and that's over the entire site, but with respect to the building, you're building basically on top.
Yeah, we're building on top of impervious conditions as well.
And the ordinance asked, will the use emit smoke, dust, odor, other air pollution, noise, vibration, light, electrical disturbances, and so forth?
No, I don't anticipate any of that.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have for this witness.
Board, have any questions about the proposal?
I just have sort of, I guess, a comment. I find it a little strange, your breezeway concept, that the apartment residents would have to go through the breezeway that has 2 doors and out the backside.
And, well, that was something that, the breezeway is really a way to connect the existing building that we're proposing today and the future building that is part of the bigger development.
Right.
I'm not sure if the breezeway is going to happen until we have that larger building. And that's something that,
The larger building is needed for the business, but that breezeway, there will be a sidewalk where the tenants will park, a lighted sidewalk, and they would just basically cut right through under the breezeway and right to the stairwell to go up.
And if I may jump in, perhaps the question I should have asked was, why is the entrance on not on the Second Street side versus the Second Street side of the building?
well, it's the way that we.
Well,
think of it as-
aesthetically was
yeah.
the main reason for that. Plus, it's not taking, I'm not taking any parking spaces, which would actually almost take up 2 if I was to put it on the Second Avenue side.
I understand your reasoning. It's just, my concern would be then that breezeway, those doors would they be locked? I mean, say a visitor who's not familiar with the site approaches and they can't get to those apartments.
I understand, and I'm sorry, that breezeway is just roofed.
Open.
I'm sorry, that picture is wrong.
Okay.
There are no doors on that. That's just,
Okay.
basically, from my showroom, it's just so the people can walk through without getting wet.
Okay,
So, but there are no sides on that.
fine. Thank you.
The breezeway is not enclosed.
Exactly, yes. It basically just bridges the 2 buildings to keep people dry or for whatever reason.
And that's something we would have to see under land development anyway, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to cover this with Mr. Gambone, but we can do it now. And with reference, and Mr. Mazzocchi, could you put the site plan up? Thank you. I had it before. So, on the site plan, Mr. Gambone, people who are in the residents of the apartments may park here, or you may actually have them park in other areas on the site once that's developed, correct?
Correct.
But if someone would come in from the front, if you call it that, you're gonna construct a sidewalk that goes around the building and through the breezeway to the rear to the stair tower, is that correct?
Correct.
So there'd be a sidewalk, not just blacktop, correct?
Correct.
Right, and what provision would you make for lighting and for security?
We will have sconces on the wall of the building, and we will have sidewalk lights to go to the stairwell.
And we have a light in the breezeway and at the stairwell?
Absolutely.
And what about security?
We will have security cameras on site that will view the whole property.
Now, with your business, well, maybe I can just start with the next witness after the question, I'm sorry.
Any more questions for the architect? No? Okay, let's hear from Mr. Gambone then.
Mr. Gambone, you're the owner of this property with your wife?
Correct.
And you have a business, and what's the name of your business?
American Tile and Marble,
How long have you been in that business?
15 years.
And where's it located now?
It is located on 1975 West Main Street, Jeffersonville.
Okay, so you're gonna, you've bought this property to move your business here and stay there hopefully for the rest of your career?
Correct.
Okay, now, with respect to, and what is your business? What do you do?
We install flooring.
And do you have, with respect to this property, how will you use the existing building? And I'm talking about the front and the existing building that we see
The
today.
existing building is mainly for showroom, for customers to select materials, and for my estimating people to select when they get prints, which we talked about before. They would get prints in, and we would have the material at our fingertips to be able to look at it and see what we're bidding on.
Okay, so in terms of renovation, are you going to renovate both the, we'll call it the house building or the front building, and the rear building, the addition where the apartments are proposed?
Yes, completely.
Okay. And in terms of the renovation, so you're going to go down to you're just going to completely redo all the systems and everything else?
There will be nothing existing except for the structure.
By the way, the structure of the existing building where the apartments are proposed, what's that building made of?
That is a block building, complete masonry building.
So you own, and you're familiar with with building techniques, correct? You're not anticipating any problem with supporting the load of the apartments above it?
Absolutely not. We wouldn't do it if that was the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
With respect to your business, what are your hours of operation?
Our hours of operation are 9 to 5 p.m.
And is that pretty much standard? You may be there a little bit later, but your employees, they're in and gone by
I
then?
may be in my office later, but my employees generally are gone by 4 o'clock every day.
And how do you operate your business? Do a lot of customers come to your company?
We are an appointment-only showroom, unless, you do get a customer that stops in. We are 95% contractor-based, so most of our jobs are bid on plans, and materials are delivered to site, and that's where we go install.
So the warehouse, would that store most of your materials or materials delivered to the building site?
That would store basically Mrs. Smith's home material, not our majority of our business.
You have,
And
Yeah.
tools.
now with respect to employees, how many employees would be at the site during the day? Not in the morning, not in the evening, but during the day on a typical day?
You will have 7 installers come to the shop every day, for the most part, and I have 3 office people.
Okay. The installers, do they stay at the property or do they go?
They do not. They come get a truck and then they leave.
Okay, and you have vans that they
Correct.
drive, okay. How many customers do you get in the course of a week to your property, your business now?
That's hard to say, but I would venture to say that you would get no more than 2 a day into the showroom,
Do you operate on Saturdays?
by appointment only.
Do you anticipate any conflict between the use of the apartments and your business?
No.
And do you believe there would be adequate parking for all uses on this property?
Absolutely.
Now, I don't know if we're really relevant here, but well, we addressed this, but we can go over it again a little bit. So with respect to the apartments, you're going to assign parking spaces for the people who live
Correct.
there? And some people may have 1 car, some may have none, some may have 2 cars for an apartment, correct?
Correct. I mean, I am anticipating they are small apartments. I am anticipating them having 1 car, but we will give 2 spaces per unit.
And the people who park in the front or come to the front, they take the sidewalk around to the back and call it the back and enter. Are you going to landscape and clean up that property
yeah,
and make it look good?
absolutely.
Okay. You going to allow parties in the apartments?
Maybe.
Does your business generate noise, substantial noise, vibration, any effect off-site?
No.
In terms of lighting, what do you anticipate? We're going to talk about that in land development, but with respect to this building and the proposed
I'm
building.
going to have censored lights on. I don't need parking lot lights for my part of my business, but I will have censored lights in case there's
Someone comes on the
any
property.
kind of theft or anything that will be incorporated with the cameras.
And with respect to the surrounding area, and you can see it from the photograph, but, and I think the board's familiar, but what's the use on, we'll call it to the right of the property, to the northeast side?
It's a gas station.
Okay, and there's a small house to the, I'd say directly to
Correct.
the north? And across Second Street, there are houses, but they're set back, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Do you anticipate that this use is going to have any adverse effect on
I do not.
neighbors? Okay. I think that's all I have for Mr. Gambo.
Any questions from the board? Okay. Any other testimony? You're good.
No, I moved the exhibits into evidence. We had an exhibit from Mr. Mrzinski who gave his opinion regarding the lawfulness of the use of the
Right.
property, and that's what it's there for.
Okay. Well, exhibits will be admitted. I guess the only other thing, is there any public comment on this application? Okay. Then, hearing's closed at this point. What's the board's desire on this? This is coming back to you for a land development plan.
You have to draw up an opinion, correct?
Yeah, there'll have to be a written decision, which I can bring back at your next meeting. I mean, in terms of acting on this, if you wanted to act on it tonight, the only conditions really would go to land development, you know, those requirements and all other requirements that are going to be implicated by land development, unless the board wants to discuss other conditions as part of the approval. You could do that, you know, at the next meeting. I'll have to have a short, this is going to be a fairly short written decision on this.
I think typically, John, you write up the decision and then we take action.
Bring it back?
I think that would
Okay.
be my preference.
Okay.
I see no reason not to move forward, so.
Yeah, I don't have any issues other than things that'll be land development related, so.
Yeah, okay. So the next meeting, September?
September 5th?
September 5th. So there'll be a written decision on the board's agenda that night for a vote. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, before we move on to item 3C, we're going to have just a quick real quick 5-minute recess because the next one could be a little extensive. If anybody needs to, you know, leave and head home or head to the restroom.
Yeah. He can-
We will proceed and get things moving here so we can get out in a timely manner. Our next item on the agenda is a conditional use hearing for a property on Church Road. The addresses, there's several addresses, 420, 426, and 428, and a separate parcel, 43-0002308. And our solicitor now will take this conditional use hearing, and the applicant is here as well.
Okay. Just a little bit of background to describe what this is. A conditional use hearing, the board is acting as a hearing board, as the judges in this. They'll hear sworn testimony, take public comment, and the proposal is a proposal for village house development under the zoning ordinance. It's about 10.3 acres, the tract of ground that's involved here. The proposal, at this point, a sketch plan proposal is 26 single-family dwellings. The lot sizes are approximately 8,000 square feet. There is some amount of open space that is required, and we'll hear about that from the applicant. The ordinance section that's involved is 143-36E. There are specific architectural requirements and other requirements for a village house development in the zoning ordinance. Is there any, and I have heard that there are some neighbors here that are interested in this application. Is there any neighbors here that want to become a party to this application? Which means you can cross-examine witnesses, you can call your own witnesses. You don't have to be a party in order to make public comment. So it's a little difference. So is there anybody here that wants to actively participate in this application as a party? And if you do, I'll need your name and address. Sir, what's your name and address?
My name is Bruce Landis, Landis. My address is 3035 Walker Lane.
Okay. Okay, anyone else? There will be a public comment period for public comment once the sworn testimony is done. So we do the sworn testimony of the witnesses, and then the board has questions. I may have some questions, and then we close the hearing, and then there's public comment at that point. So, okay, Mr. Fry, you're here representing the, yes, sir.
When you say public comment, do you often question?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me, is that after you make your decision?
No. No, there won't be a decision made tonight. As you heard, you were here for the earlier one. The board typically takes the testimony, public comment, and then comes back at the next meeting, which in this case will be September 5th, and there'll be a vote that night. They have to issue a written decision. So between now and September 5th, you know, that'll be something that I'll put together a proposal for the board, and then they vote on that. So tonight is, you know, doing the hearing, getting the testimony, getting the public comment into the record, and then the decision will be on September 5th. Okay? The applicant in this case is Anthony C. Branca Jr. This was also advertised August 1st and August 8th for a public hearing tonight. The property's in the R2 zoning district. Mr. Fry.
Thank you. Eric Fry, DeShaw Bardon Doley here for the applicant. Thanks for having us tonight. As stated, we are here for conditional use pursuant to 143-36E. That subsection and other sections of the zoning ordinance contain general and specific criteria that we have to comply with to obtain this conditional use. We're going to go through that criteria tonight. Much like the application you just heard, we do not have fully engineered plans. That step will happen after tonight. And the reason for that is essentially it's very costly to go through that engineering process. And we don't want to spend that money, obviously, if we get denied on the conditional use. So what you have, or what you will see in front of you, is a sketch plan which shows the layout of the roads, sidewalks, trails, the lots themselves, common area where the stormwater is going to go. You'll also see an architectural rendering of the proposed homes as required by your ordinance, which we'll go through. I have two witnesses. One is the applicant, Anthony Branca. The other is the engineer in the project, Joseph Estock. So I can get those sworn in right now, if that be acceptable.
Yeah.
I do.
I would like to mark two things as exhibits, both of which you should have. One is as A1 would be the application package. That package had our full application. It had our sketch plan. It had our architectural rendering. It also had our zoning summary of how we comply with all the criteria and definition or the identification of the properties themselves. A2, which I put up on your spots during the break, is the CV of Joseph Estock, which I'll have him go over once we get to his testimony. And with that, I can call my first witness.
Yeah, A1, then, the application has a stamp date of July 30th, 2019. So that'll be A1.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Bronca? You comfortable standing? Do you want to sit? Test. You just heard it.
Yep.
Could you just state your name and address for the record?
Anthony Branca, 3007 Penview Lane, Norristown, PA.
And are you the owner of the properties that are the subject of this application?
That's correct.
And how many tracks are there?
4 tracks.
And are they the 4 tracks that were on Exhibit A that was attached to our application that was submitted as A1?
Yes, that's correct.
And as part of this application, do you propose to merge these tracks?
Yes, I do.
And what is the total acreage?
10.3 acres.
And what's the current use of the 4 tracks?
We have a single-family dwelling on one of the tracks that's currently rented, and the others are just vacant land.
So are there any other improvements on these properties?
There's a shed, that goes with the house, and, they have public water and sewer. There's also an additional lateral on the property for a house that was torn down quite a few years ago.
And what are the surrounding uses?
Surroundings are, we have, facing the property, we have the Pennsylvania American Water Company water tower on the complete right side. It runs from the front all the way to the back of the property, and I believe that's about 6-acre parcel. Behind us, we have Esky Park and a trail that goes along the back of the property there. On the left side, we have a Pico Tower in that corner there, and then beyond that is the Township Garage, and then there's a house on the other side of that stone road, and across the street there's residential single-family dwellings.
So when is there a paper street that
Yeah,
runs
there's a
along
little
this property
street there.
line?
Yep, that's for access for the Pico Tower and the lot. There was a lot there that we purchased.
And what is your proposed use?
To build single-family detached dwellings within the village housing development.
And how many lots do you propose?
26.
And what other site improvements do you propose?
We're going to do curb and sidewalk around on Church Road and in front of all the homes.
So for the entire frontage of Church Road?
Yeah, the entire frontage of Church Road.
Yep.
And around the bulb there, I'll call it, to the outside there that meets the homes. And then we're going to do a trail that's going to go from the sidewalk back to the park, so people can walk through the development and get access to the park a lot easier than they do now. Do some stormwater management, of course, and create some open space.
And do you know the acreage of the common area?
Joe would know better. I'm going to say
All right.
it's about 3 acres for the common area if we total it all together.
And will you also connect your trail to the Esky Park Trail if the township would require that?
That's correct.
And have you made application for subdivision yet?
I have not.
And there's a reason, because what I
Yeah,
stated earlier about
correct, yeah.
having to fully engineer the plans?
Correct.
And you will agree to file that application once we receive conditional use approval?
That is
And go
correct.
through that
Yes.
process with the township?
Yes.
And, Mike, could you put the architectural rendering up there? And this is also part of A1 in your packages.
Right.
Is this a typical designed home that you would propose on the property?
That's correct.
And have you fully designed the layout of the interior of the homes?
We have not.
What's the number of bedrooms, bathrooms?
We're looking to offer 3 and 4 bedroom homes. We'd like to do some first floor masters. Like 2,600 square feet could be up to 3,000.
And as this shows, you actually are showing a couple different design elements on the front of the property.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to do some stone and siding. We like the cedar shake siding, as you see in the top peaks.
Yep.
We built a house on Sunnyside Avenue that was well-liked, and we're going to take some of them elements and transfer them over here as well.
And then you also have some of the architectural bump outs and things like that to make it more appealing.
Correct, yeah. Some peaked roofs and maybe some standing seam roofs and stuff like that.
All right, that's all I have of this witness.
Board have questions?
Mr. Landis.
Mr. Landis. Mr. Mr. Amos Landis.
Thank you. So a few questions, just, I have trouble visualizing the size. So a question relative to what's shown on the front elevation, is that a 1 or 2 car garage envisioned?
That's a 2-car garage, yeah.
Okay. I had a question that's more for the board, actually, that's in related to the newly passed ordinance 143-36E, that is for the village house type of property size, which is that correct? Village house? Yes, village house size. In that ordinance, there doesn't appear to be any considerations given to requirements or impact on neighboring properties, such as what's considered here. There is your typical ordinances relative to percentages of, forget the term for impervious use percentages, as well as building occupancy and things like that. But there doesn't seem to be any provisions made for adjacent properties. And if we could go back to the sketch, please. As you can see, some of these envisioned properties are immediately adjacent to other property lines. Granted, to the bottom portion of this, which is the water tower property, that's not a residential area, but there is properties on the other side of that. And that's largely where the folks here today that I'm speaking on behalf of have concerns.
Well, let's do this, because we have a witness.
Sure.
Who, you don't have any more questions
I had one other question relative to
to his testimony. Ask him
Correct.
about his testimony.
Yeah, I'll do that. So the one question I had, which wasn't explained, is are the properties envisioned to have dug basements, or are they a slab dwelling?
Yeah, they'll have foundations. Yeah,
They're
they'll have
foundations, okay.
Full basements, yeah.
I think that's all the questions I have for the witness.
You said a full basement?
A full basement,
full
yeah.
basement.
Yeah, full
Okay.
basement, correct.
The full basement, not
Okay.
slab.
Yeah.
And the issue, just the ordinance issue as to impacts on adjacent property owners, that's why there's a conditional use hearing.
Sure.
Going on. I mean,
Okay. All right.
that's why this use was permitted as conditional use, so that if there are impacts, you folks bring those forward.
Yeah, I just wanted some clarification on the ordinance itself, which wasn't really to him. I apologize for not.
No, that's fine, but that's why, this could have been a use permitted by right, there would be no hearing, it would go right to subdivision, but you get this additional review and scrutiny in front of the Board of Supervisors, neighbors get notice. So if there's issues, specific issues, impacts, now's the time to do it, or really, it's going to be a subdivision plan, if this moves forward after this hearing, where, the rubber meets the road and all the details come out about everything that's going to happen and where the trail goes and how wide's the trail going to be and where's the stormwater going to run off. So we're not at that level of detail tonight. Tonight is just a use.
Okay.
26 homes, 8,000 square feet lots on 10 acres.
One last question then for the developer of the proposed sketch here. And out of the 10.3 acres, I think you estimated 3 acres or 30% of the property is open space. Do you have an idea of the total area of this land that is now impervious as a result of this plan? That's including the location of the homes themselves, their driveways, the sidewalk, the road, all of that. Do we have an idea of what that total percentage of land would be?
Yeah, that'll be a question for the engineer. And I think that's more towards land development as well.
But we have to look at that.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't need an
Yeah.
answer now, but I'm just curious to that.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Estock, have you testified before this board before?
Yes, numerous times.
All right, and is this your CV, what I provided to the board as Exhibit A2?
Yes, sir.
And what's your business name and your business address?
It's Joseph M. Estock, Consulting Engineers and Land Surveyors. The address is 355 South Henderson Road in Cambridge, Prussia.
And how long have you been an engineer?
I started practicing engineering in 1983.
And you're a registered professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania?
Yes, sir.
Would just like to offer Mr. Estock, who I believe has been recognized as an expert before, correct?
That's correct.
In civil engineering.
Okay. Board have any questions? It will be accepted.
All right. Were you hired by the applicant to design the development on this property?
Yes, sir.
And could you go over the existing conditions?
Sure.
It's a difficult pen.
It's a 10.3 acre property. This is the outline of the property. That's directly across from Sky Drive. The property presently has a single-family detached house on the property, and it abuts the Pennsylvania American Water Company tower site to the southern side, Esky Park to the rear, the south side. There's a property here owned by Pico that they have a tower site on it. And there's a stone road that leads back to the Lower Providence Township Maintenance Garage back here. And we do have the frontage along Church Road in the front.
And what is the proposal that we have before the board tonight?
What we're proposing is a 26-lot, single-family detached development under the village standards.
And could you just go over the improvements that are proposed?
Yes, sir. What we propose to do is provide a new public street that will intersect Church Road directly opposite Sky Drive. So it'll be a continuation of Sky Drive. And it will come into the site, loop back around upon itself so they could exit out. So it won't be a cul-de-sac.
And are they 26 single-family homes?
Yes, they're all single-family detached homes.
And could you just describe the couple little out parcels, if there were, of open space? What's the one along Esky Park?
Yeah, we have 4 parcels. This is open space area D, which is 12,531 square feet of land. And our proposal, and it's mentioned on the plan, we're offering this parcel here, this triangular portion, to Lower Providence Township to be annexed to the park. The reason we're proposing that is because somewhere in the past, an inlet draining the park and a storm sewer pipe was installed, and it went onto the subject property, and it outlets on our property. So it's our intent to give that property to Lower Providence Township so we could rectify the condition of that storm sewer pipe from the park that leads onto this subject property.
And if they would not accept that, would we just then incorporate that area into our lots?
Absolutely. We would just extend those lots, those adjoining lots, number 14, 15, and 16, back to the perimeter boundary line and just make that parcel D a part of those lots.
All right, and what's the little out parcel right above that?
Yeah, that's parcel open space C, which is 2,331, stuff getting old, 2,331 square feet of land.
You just point it out on the plan. Yeah, you just-
What's that, 25 feet wide or 20?
hang on.
20 feet. Yes, there's a 20-foot wide strip of land between these two lots. The sole purpose of that is to have an interconnection pedestrian link between Esky Park and the loop trail around Esky Park to the roadway system that we're proposing. Furthermore, and globally, is really to get residents and citizens from Esky Park, back from Esky Park to the residential areas. Right now, it's kind of like a circuitous route if you have to get to the park, but now we'll have a direct pedestrian link from Sky Drive, Church Road, and the adjoining properties through our development up through this open space parcel to connect to Esky Park.
And everything, again, on our property has sidewalks, so it would be an off-street, essentially, connection from Church Road into Esky Park.
That's true.
You're blowing it up on yourself.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
going to
I
actually give it to you, the 1,812 square foot parcel.
Yeah, what we have here is, and once again, this is similar in nature to D. What we're doing here is I'm just reserving a parcel of land for future connection to the open space on the tower. We have absolutely no plans of developing that tower parcel. We have no idea of anybody having any plans for that at all. I just thought it might be in the best interest of the township to have that there in the event of a future connection if this should ever get developed. If the township is uncomfortable with that or they feel it's not necessary, once again, we could easily incorporate that into lot number 19. We're not counting that towards our open space computations or anything else. I just didn't want to lot it out and put another lot in there, and then in the future have someone say, hey, you never provided a link for future adjoining space that's not developed.
So if that Pico Tower lot would ever become either park space or another development, they could connect through our road.
If they want to, but they also have rights to the access of the stone paper road through here too, so they could use that. But it's just, it was like a conservative approach to laying out the development.
And then the circle open space inside the street.
Yeah, we're calling that open space B, which is 51,174 square feet of land, which is the entire interior circle of this property, which is an existing wooded section that we're going to retain.
So is there a proposal for how that's going to be used at this point?
It's just going to be passive recreation, maybe walking path. We don't have definite plans for it, but if they wanted picnic benches or something like that in there, we don't want to remove the trees, so we're not making it into ball fields and things like that. But it can be used as, number one, kept open for green space, kept open for the wooded area, and for passive uses through there. Okay.
And now open space A.
Yeah, that's the largest parcel. A is 65,427 square feet, which is the corner of the site here. We didn't get to the land development stage, so I don't envision the entire property being used for stormwater management. But the low area, where all the water goes from the site, I do intend to have some stormwater management up in the corner, and then the balance of the property will just sort of be retained as open space.
And as you reviewed the zoning ordinance, does our proposal comply with all the general and specific criteria for conditional use?
It does.
And are the specific criteria set forth in section 143-36E?
They are.
And how did you determine the lot yield of 26 units?
We're permitted a density of 2.5 units per gross area of a 10.3 acre property. Doing the math, it comes to 26 units.
All right. And how much open space is provided?
If you count just A and B, it's 2.67 acres, which fulfills the requirement. Once again, a conservative approach. Actually, when you add in C and D, we're about 3.03 acres when you count all four parcels, not counting at all this road right-of-way parcel. The reason that we wanted to fulfill the open space requirement with this just B and A is if the township decides they don't want this piece of land or they don't want a connection to the park, we could lot that out into the lots and still be compliant with zoning and the open space requirements just with parcels A and B. So A and B, 2.67 acres, A, B, C, and D, 3.03 acres.
And the requirement is 25% of 10.3 acres or 2.57.
That's correct.
And how much common area is proposed?
I'm considering B as the common area here. Because it can be used for the passive recreation. I think it's 1.17 acres.
And what's required?
We're required to have a third of the total open space requirement, or 0.8 acres. So that exceeds the requirement.
And do all of the proposed lots exceed the, meet or exceed the 8,000 square foot minimum?
They do.
And do all the lots meet the 55 minimum lot width?
They do.
Do all the lot widths meet the building coverage requirement?
They do.
And they're all under 30% building coverage?
They are.
And do all the lots meet the impervious coverage requirement?
They do.
And do you know, to answer the gentleman's question, do you know approximately what the resulting impervious coverage of this property would be?
You know, actually, I do not know what the resulting impervious coverage is. I know that in the zoning for the village commercial, for the village housing, you're allowed to be up to 45% on the lot.
We're well below that for each.
So even if you look at the smallest lot, the 8,000 square feet, we're less than 45% there. When you compare it to the larger lots, the lots that up to 11,000 square feet, you know, the percentages may drop down to 30. Then when you consider for the entire site with the open space, I'm just guessing, but it's probably close to maybe 20% coverage. But I said I could do that exact math.
And that's something that will come out
Yes.
during land development?
Yeah.
Okay. And do all the lots show a 25 feet front yard?
They do.
And do all the lots show a 10 feet side yard?
Yes, sir.
And do any of the proposed lots abut a residential use?
None of the entire property does not abut residential uses.
And for those residential uses, they would actually, if we abutted one, we would have more yard requirements.
Yeah, we incorporated that into the ordinance where if you abutted residential uses, you'd have to have greater buffers to protect those residential properties. Where you don't abut that, you still have to have setbacks from those adjoining properties, but it's lessened.
All right. Do all the lots show a required 30-foot rear yard?
Yes, sir.
And would the owner accept the condition, if this were approved, that all future decks must comply with the required setback requirements in the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
And will the proposed homes have a maximum height of 35 feet and/or 3 stories?
Yes.
Will each lot have a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces?
Yes.
Is public water and sewer proposed?
Yes, sir.
Will the new street be offered for dedication?
It will be offered for dedication.
And if it's not accepted for dedication, it will be a private street?
Yes, sir.
Are any accessory uses proposed at this time?
They're permitted, but none are proposed at this time.
And we already showed the board the architectural renderings that were submitted as part of A1.
Yes.
And will we agree as a condition that we will have pitched roofs and architectural features as shown in the architectural rendering?
We will.
And we'll have at least 2 building materials as required by the ordinance?
We will.
And does the proposed development meet all the general criteria set forth in zoning ordinance section 143-80?
It does.
We already showed the site plan requirements. In your opinion, is the proposed development compatible with surrounding and existing land uses?
It is.
And you're actually connecting it, as long as the rest of the township, with the township park?
Correct.
Will the proposed development adversely affect the character of the surrounding land uses and general neighborhood at all?
No, I do not believe so.
Will the proposed use provide adequate access to public roads without creating hazardous conditions or areas of poor alignment?
Forget it, this is positive, negative. It will not adversely affect those conditions.
And you've actually lined up this street with the existing street across the way for that purpose?
Yes, sir.
And did you go out and actually survey the property and look at the site distance for the 4 lots that are fronting on Church Road?
We did,
And
yes.
there's adequate site distance for those driveways?
Yes, there are.
And does the proposed development and use conform with the requirements of zoning ordinance Article 14?
Yes, it does.
And will the proposed use and development result in an appropriate use of land, conserve open space, be safe from fire, panic, other dangers, have adequate light and air, prevent overcrowding of land, congestion of population, and will be adequately served by public and community services?
It will, yes.
And does the proposed use and development comply with section 143-118, capital B through capital E?
It does comply with those sections.
And will the proposed use and development generate significantly more traffic volume than other permitted uses?
It will not.
And this is a single-family development?
It is.
And a single-family development's permitted in the underlying zoning?
That's right.
Will the proposed use and development generate noise, noxious odors, air pollution, or glare, or result in pedestrian, vehicular, or other safety hazards?
No.
And again, for pedestrian, you actually creating a trail connection and sidewalk to protect the pedestrians.
That's true.
Are there any loading or unloading operations going on with this development?
None.
And does the proposed use and development satisfy the criteria set forth in the application for conditional use?
It does.
Does it comply with the declaration of legislative intent?
Yes.
And is the proposed use and development compatible in type, character, and intensity with the surrounding land uses and the neighborhood?
Yes.
Are there essential public services available and of adequate capacity to service the proposed use and development?
Yes.
And this shall include but not be limited to water, stormwater management, sanitary sewer disposal, utilities, police, fire, school, parks and rec, and transportation.
Yes.
And for stormwater, have you designed that at this point?
Have not.
Again, that will happen during land development?
It will.
But you've measured the space that we've reserved for that, and it's adequate space?
Yes, sir.
And will any stormwater facilities be located on the lots themselves?
Other than some infiltration pits, no detention bases, yes.
No basins,
No surface
rain
bases, no
gardens?
rain gardens, correct.
And does the use and development comply with the land use and design standards of the zoning ordinance, including but not limited to internal circulation, parking, lighting, and landscaping?
It does.
And again, a lot of those things will come out during land development, the landscaping and things like that.
Yes.
All right, that's all I have for this witness.
Board have questions?
Mr. Estek, good evening.
Good evening.
You're lining up with Sky Circle there. Obviously, it's Sky Drive. It's early, but will your traffic engineer look at the feasibility of a four-way stop sign there to see if it allows residents to get in and out of Church Road safely and slow down traffic on Church Road?
We'll do a traffic study, and a part of that will be the warrants necessary for a four-way stop. So that will be evaluated, and then it will be signed accordingly. If it's not warranted to have a four-way stop, then it may just be a two-way stop and allow Church Road to go through. But it all depends upon the results of the traffic study and if the sufficient warrants for a four-way stop exist.
All right, so you will investigate whether or not, during your traffic study, whether a four-way stop sign would be appropriate there?
We will do that, yes.
Thank you.
So it's important, as Mr. Rice had said earlier, to keep in mind the difference between conditional use and land development, and I hesitate to get into the weeds too much. But we talk about traffic, and the site or the plan that you have up there shows 4 additional homes onto Church Road, which front onto Church Road, involve driveways onto Church Road, which increase traffic onto Church Road, including pulling out, backing out. And now we're talking about, which I like, the possibility of a four-way traffic or a signal stop sign rather at, Sky Drive. So I can just tell you that, conditional use is one thing, but when we get into land development, that's not acceptable. So some things we'll need to take a look at.
One thing that we did there, and it's a little hard to tell on this plan, but on those 4 lots themselves, we actually have driveways that have like little backup spaces. So they're actually, maybe I could show you here.
Yeah, I know. I know what.
So that none of them have to back out.
Right.
On Church Road, and that's not existing here. Not that we couldn't do it.
You still have that coming up to the intersection, though. And again, if we get to that point, that would be land development, but you just need to know going in that that doesn't meet with what we've been talking about with trying to, mitigate issues with traffic. A four-way stop sign does. That slows things down on that road and, potentially creates a much safer environment for everybody in the area, but those 4 homes don't.
Yeah, I fully understand, yes.
I think one of the issues also, and again, this gets into land development, but, you can hear some early chatter in the audience about potential impact on value of homes and whatnot. Have you looked at other developments such as this in the township that might be going on now?
I really can't answer that question.
No. So you don't know price point potentially?
The answer was no for the court reporter.
Any other board questions?
Yeah, I just have one question. So you mentioned that if a homeowner would purchase this, there would be no impact to them installing like a deck or a patio. It seems like the configuration of some of the lots might make that difficult to comply. You know, they certainly wouldn't be able to keep it within the building envelope.
Well, yeah.
Well, there is some relief in the zoning where it does allow a deck to come outside the building envelope. So that, none of them are designed now, but they are allowed to be a little closer than what the building envelope showed on the plans.
And then the accessory uses like the sheds also don't have to be within that building setback either.
Right,
Yeah.
right. They have to be within 5
Yeah,
feet.
but agreed, there's definitely lots that you can't accommodate a deck or a patio that would still be within the building envelope, and specifically lot number 4. There's just not enough room in the backyard. But I think other than lot number 4, every other lot, you could probably still put that deck or the patio still within the yards, yes.
I was looking at 12 being
Yeah,
one.
well, you know what, 12 is the odd one on there because it was a very shallow lot, so it's a specially designed unit, same size as the others, it's just that the garage doors are on the opposite end, so it's a little bit different, yes.
Okay. Well, that's something when we get into
Yes,
the real
sure.
details, that maybe some of those lots start to decrease
Yeah.
in number, not
Okay.
26. Okay.
Anything else from the board? Mr. Landis?
Yes. Question, is this street not restrict on-street parking? I don't know if that's a question for you. Would there be restrictions to on-street parking?
What's the width of the proposed street, sir?
26 feet wide cartway.
And what would and again, we haven't, the police department might have, what would be the proposed on-street parking?
One side, yeah.
One side?
Yeah.
Okay. Which side?
Well,
Because with all the driveways coming out onto the street, you know, there's spaces, I guess, in between, that creates a little bit, sometimes a congested situation
I mean, I definitely, I think these area around the loop.
on the outer.
Yeah, you would want to be on the inside with the parking, because the inside, you have all the driveway openings, and that would interrupt the on-street parking, so it would be most efficient to put the parking on the inside of the loop. And that's, if you look at the site plan from there, then you're only down to maybe 7 lots, which, this is probably the most efficient place to put the on-street parking over here. So I would say, I would envision, and here again, we're flexible, the on-street parking on the inside of this loop, and maybe a few on-street parking stalls on this side coming in.
Another question following up on Mr. Sorgini's question on Church Road, the more recently developed areas, oftentimes there's a setback or a widening of Church Road to allow on-street parking, so that exists here right before Sky Drive. It also exists down by the Walker Lane intersection. Was that considered for this area here, for the homes that front up to the Church Road?
Yeah, the widening along our frontage will be identical to the property across the street. So the distance they widened from the center line, which was 30 feet, I'm sorry, which it was, I don't think I have a dimension.
This represents a widening?
Yes, yeah, they did half the widening on the one side, and then we're going to do a similar widening on our side, yes. I don't see the dimension, but we measured what their widening was, and we're going to reflect that on our side. So you have a full width roadway.
That would improve your concerns that you had there. This is currently is a very blind curve that people come around and there's deer there or
There's,
on the road and stuff like that.
there's definitely visual obstructions of vegetation in this area. There's a couple stands, which we removed because of that. So once this vegetation was removed, and it was like near this driveway intersection, then it did open it up where we could see down this Church Road.
I couldn't tell from all the lines.
Oh, there's a lot of lines. I have a tough time myself, yes.
Mr. Estock, the circle portion of the street, is that proposed to be one way or two ways?
Two-way. Two-way.
Landis, any other questions?
No, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on a minute. Any other board questions? Just, I heard stormwater systems on lots. These are 8,000 square foot lots. You said there wouldn't be any rain gardens on the lots, but there might be infiltration pits?
Yeah, with the current BMP philosophy, you really like to capture and infiltrate the water where it's generated. So if you have a house with some downspouts, I envision a small seepage bed where you could collect some of that surface, some of that runoff from the roofs and infiltrate it. But that's not really going to control the peak discharges of all the storms. It's just to capture what's coming off the roof to mitigate that locally. But the vast majority of the rate control is going to be in a detention basin that's going to be a community type basin.
What about the roof drains just going into the stormwater system?
We could do that too, yeah, but I personally like to try to like manage it, you know, a little bit on each lot too. But honestly, it's my concept. When I run the numbers, it may work, it may not work. We get the infiltration testing done, you know, that could impact it too. But when I laid this out, I wanted to have at least a concept of what I was thinking with regard to how I was going to manage the stormwater.
So just like what Mr. Sorgini said about land development, we've had some issues with small lots, developers putting rain gardens on them, landowners buying the lots and not realizing they can't touch that, it's a utility. So your infiltration pits are not rain gardens, they're underground, but you still won't be able to disturb them, right?
That's right.
So, you know, it makes more sense to me in my, I practice engineering every once in a while, to run the roof drains into the main stormwater system. Is there going to be sump pumps on these houses too?
Sure there will be.
Same
yes.
thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be amazed at how many problems people who have sump pumps that dump the water onto the ground cause for the neighbors. So just, and I know DEP doesn't necessarily believe in that. They like it all to infiltrate back in the ground, but on small lots, it's tough to do. You don't have space to do it.
That is true. You don't have space. And the other thing is that you like to keep those infiltration systems away from the foundation walls, that you have basements, you don't have problems there. So you do run into a little bit of difficulty doing that on lot. But I mean, ultimately, you know, what I'm banking on is if we have to take all those roof drains out to the storm sewer system, we could always manage it in the community basin up here.
And, I mean, that's doable. Roof
It's
drains,
doable.
sump pumps can be run into the main stormwater
absolutely, yeah.
system and not, okay.
I did have a follow-up question based on that.
Go ahead, Mr. Landis.
So, one comment, just so, yeah, you're gonna need sump pumps. We have as much as 3 feet of water in basements on Walker Lane, just so be prepared for that. There's an extremely high water table in this area, that's why we're here, that's one of our biggest concerns. If the northern property is going to be the retention basin, is that the grading from your survey that exists today? That is the downward slope of the?
Yes, this is the lowest portion of the entire track in here. Everything slopes in a direction like this. It's almost due north it flows. Yes.
There was another question back here, sir.
I just wanted to know if I could add myself in as a participant, or if it's too late.
No, you can. Just give us your name and address.
My name is Rick Pachella, Pachella. I'm at 3029 Walker Lane.
Okay. You have a question?
I do. I have a couple of questions. So, one of the concerns I had was that loop, being that it is not going to be one way, is if it's going to be undeveloped and we're going to still have all the trees there, it sounds like it would be kind of dangerous, cars coming in both directions without any line of sight as you're going around there. Another question I have is, again, with regards to traffic, we kind of take our life in our hands every day when we can get to the stop sign at Walker Lane and Church Road, I see at least 50 additional cars added to the daily traffic that would also be taking advantage of the fact that people don't like to stop at that stop sign at Walker Lane and Church Road. Is there any consideration to maybe putting a traffic light in there?
That would have to be, I mean, the township's traffic engineer is sitting here tonight. I'm not going to ask him to comment, but he knows that you're going to have to, that'll be analyzed during the land development. Yeah. Casey
Okay.
Moore.
I just want to reiterate again the challenge that we have with that stop sign at Church Road and Walker Lane. And I see you're going to have the same problem with that intersection there. Also, a question to the developer. With all due respect, I had trouble finding any prior developments that you had done on my online research, and I was wondering if you had any prior experience with a full tract development.
You know, we build typically singles, customs. We do some commercial work as well.
Okay.
Buildings and stuff like that.
My concern there is the fact that we've got a very large undertaking here. I have seen in the past where developers take on something like this, they end up getting in over their head, they go bankrupt, the land is raised and nothing's done with it. I'd hate to see that happen.
So let me tell you what happens. If they get a land development approval, before they can get a single permit, or before they can record their plans, they have to post financial security for the roads, the storm drains, all the public improvements, the signs, the landscaping, all of that gets posted with the township. Township controls that money by an agreement. Sometimes it's a letter of credit, sometimes it's part of a construction loan. So they may walk away and never build a house, but we will have the money to do all the improvements and make sure that the site doesn't turn into a trash heap or something like that. So, you know, it's happened in the past 10, 15, 20 years ago, but, you know, it would be rare for something like that to happen if a municipality, as long as they're getting the, you know, the funds to secure the improvements.
Okay.
So that would be for the water, the sewer lines and everything. All that gets put up front.
So there will be an environmental evaluation?
It'll be part of the subdivision.
Because, yeah, I mean, because there are a lot of deer in there and hawks and a lot of the, you know, I just hate to see us lose all that undisturbed land. I do have one question for you guys then. Article 143-36, when you go online, it only goes to section D. But then I noticed Ordinance 660 that was just passed in June of this year kind of points back to item D, the open Article 7, which was the open space ordinance, and kind of says if it's at the benefit of the township, we can have this waiver that reduces the minimum lot size. And I was wondering, you know, what was the purpose behind that?
You're reading
change?
from something that I don't have in front of me, so.
Ordinance 660?
The Village House Development Ordinance?
Yes.
You know what he's referring to?
Yeah, it's this ordinance, it's the
Yeah.
136E. So
Right.
essentially, what it allows the township to do is preserve the open space that we have here. If this was done under the standard R2 zoning, you would get this whole property lotted out into lots without this open space being preserved. So that's the purpose behind it, and it's allowed in several different zoning districts in the township, this being one of them.
But it changes the minimum lot size from 10,000 for R2 residential to 8,000 square feet.
That's correct.
Correct.
That's not what you asked. So you asked the purpose of it, that's what I told you. So, but you're absolutely right, it does do
Okay.
that.
All right.
Yeah, the
Fair
small, this, instead of carving up the whole property into larger lots, this is,
Okay.
requires
Well, that's good.
a set aside smaller lots.
That answers my question then. Okay, thank you.
Hold on a minute. Let's get the testimony done, and then we'll have some public comment.
I just have one other clarifying follow-up question for Mr. Estock. Relative to the open space, section D in the southernmost corner there, you mentioned that currently has, is it a French drain coming off of Esky Park? I didn't really kind of understand.
No, it's a surface drainage pipe.
Oh, it's a surface drainage pipe?
Yeah.
Okay. So that goes into that part of the property, and you're giving that over to the township to preserve that and not have to re-engineer that or
Yes.
anything like that?
Yes. We're offering it to them, their choice.
Okay. Just wanted to, I didn't quite understand how you worded it.
Friday, you have any other testimony or witnesses or anything?
We do not. I don't know which one to use anymore. We do not. That's the end of our case.
Okay, so, the record's closed, the hearing's closed, but there is public comment. So, if the board take public comment at this point? Okay. All right, any public comment on the application or anything that anyone has heard? Sure, just, you need to come up to the podium, name and address, please.
Robert Dodds, 3037 Walker Lane. I didn't know it was going to be closed before I spoke, but...
It's still being recorded.
Okay, good. I have a couple questions for the board. My wife was given the plan, this plan, yesterday, and on it, there was it had, unlike what's now been approved through ordinance number 660, the lot area on the zoning before this June 20th 660 ordinance, the lot area was 25,000 square feet, and it switched down to 8,000. The front yard was 50 feet, and now it's down to 25 feet. The side yard was 20 feet on either side, and now it's 10 on one side and 20 on the other. And the rear yard switched from 60 feet to 30 feet, and impervious coverage went from 35 to 45%. And these homes are very small. This is going to be, it's going to look like Kensington in Lower Providence. And I'm worried about this 660 ordinance. And I have a question for you. Can other developers use this ordinance now and build wherever, any nook and cranny in the township, and put it in there? If this is really upsetting, because this is really, I can't understand who benefits from the 660 ordinance other than a developer. Can you explain that to me? All three of you. I mean, you signed it.
Well, let me just tell you what happened, because that ordinance was advertised, there were public hearings on that ordinance.
Well, let me tell you, I got a letter.
Let me finish. And the question you asked was a question that the board asked, where else could this happen in the township? So the staff did an analysis of all the parcels, where this could possibly happen, and you'll see that there's a maximum lot size for this development. Lots for a development that would come in of 8,000 square foot lots. I think the maximum site size is 15 acres.
What's the minimum? The minimum's the question.
No. Right. So you couldn't combine a larger piece of ground beyond 15 acres. So, and there was an analysis done of all the parcels where this could possibly build, and it was a very few and far between where this could happen. But it was an application that was filed by this particular applicant. It was a zoning petition. There were hearings held. It went to the Planning Commission. It went to the Montgomery County Planning Commission, and the board approved it. But you're right. The lot size went down from what it was down to 8,000. If you do a village house development, and if you meet the criteria of the village house development.
Well, it just seemed like 660 was meant directly for this project. And you know, I have one other issue. The clear cutting under your regulations under 123-113 says that no clear cutting shall be permitted under any circumstances. Clear cutting means the removal of 30% or more of the trees within woodland lots. Woodland lots are defined as any area, grove, or stand of woody plants, evergreens, or deciduous covering of 10,000 square feet of foliage. Well, this area is 50,000 square feet of foliage. And there's heritage trees that were mentioned in our regulations in our township that certain size trees cannot be touched. And this thing's going to come right through the woods there, which is all our kids have played there and enjoyed it. It makes Esky Park beautiful because you have a real nice field there and you have a woods right next to it. I think that the board should reconsider this and at least leave some feet of open space in between any park you put in, any residential park, separate to the Esky Park, just for the aesthetics, at least for that. And, you know, I think the traffic along Church Road there's accidents all the time on Church and Germantown Pike. That's, I know we have our police chief here, he knows that. And there's also a big problem on the other side, on Ridge. And this is going to add tons of traffic. It's just a very bad idea. I mean, I can see a few homes put in there, but this is very upsetting to most of our neighbors, and it's going to reduce the value of our homes. And it's very upsetting to see this 660 get put in. We get a letter on Thursday. No, we got it, what, Friday? Friday, I got a letter about this. This is when we found out about this. We heard nothing about anything else. You send us a letter on 6 days prior to it, but then you said back in June it was well publicized. Well, if it's well publicized, I think it should be a letter out to the neighbors that are right adjacent to it. So I'm a little frustrated, and I wish you take our concerns seriously, and hopefully you reject this plan. And thanks for your time.
Hi, my name is Darlene Primavera. I'm at 5102 Brandywine Drive, which is right across the street. I have a comment and possibly a request. A few years ago, the township repaved Church Road. A few months after that had occurred, I had a sinkhole in my backyard between the sidewalk and the road, that grassy area. Township personnel came out and said that the stormwater drainage pipe was not working, that the water was leaking around the pipe, out of the pipe, around the pipe, and then continued on to the detention basin in our neighborhood. So that was washing away the dirt underneath the topsoil and then eventually sank. They weren't able to fix it because they had just paved the road. And the comment was made that our taxpayers would not like us to dig up a road that we had just paved. So what they did was they inserted macadam around that drainage pipe. They have come back and inserted more macadam around that drainage pipe throughout the last few years. I'm beginning to see that that area again is starting to sink in my backyard. So that has not been fixed. Across the street from me, I think that's section A, the road, the part closest to Eske's driveway. Okay? Up there is filled with water. That water comes out and goes right into a stormwater drain, which obviously it's not being routed where it's supposed to go. So I'm a little bit afraid of what's going to happen if we put in 26 homes, roads, sidewalks, driveways. What's going to happen to all that water that's not being drained anywhere right now? That's how it was explained to me a few years ago. Maybe they have fixed it, I don't know, but I haven't, I'm seeing that things are sinking again. So I'm letting you know there's a stormwater drain problem there, and I would like someone to come out and take a look at it. It was also said by township personnel that they were unaware that those stormwater drains were even there in our neighborhood that led from Church Road through my backyard to my neighbor's backyard and then further down. That they did not have that in their plans. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Ms. Primavera, thank you. We'll ask Mr. Primus to speak with you after the meeting and get your address, and he'll come out and take a look at the drainage pipe.
All right, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Patton from 3026 Walker Lane. I apologize for my appearance tonight. I was watching the Eagles game, and Gus yelled at me. He goes, "Come on, we got to get moving." And I didn't realize how the night got away from me. Meanwhile, here we are at 9:45 chatting. So I'll try to be quick. Look, first off, I realize that I don't know if this is going to have any impact. I don't have lawyers with me. I don't have a lot of numbers. I can't run all these zones and this and that. I'm just going to speak from the truth. And the truth is I moved into this neighborhood 6 years ago, and I decided to move into this neighborhood because of the homely, cool neighborhood, awesome feeling. And that's what Lower Providence is. That's what makes Lower Providence better than every single other township that surrounds us. It's that we make a difference and we make good decisions when it comes times for this. We don't jam houses in corners. We think about what we do, and I think that's really important. I have 3 kids, and I think 26 lots and a 10.3 acre is pushing it a little bit. They said they don't know how much they anticipate selling these houses for. Come on. Guys, you know how much you anticipate selling these houses for. You don't know how much this is going to impact the surrounding houses, prices, and values. We all know it's going to impact it. Who knows? It might impact it positively. It might impact it negatively, but it's probably going to impact it negatively. There's no association fee on these houses. They're single home dwellings. And, we don't know what kind of people are going to be moving into these houses if we don't even know how much the prices are going to be. So, again, the difference between us and surrounding townships. But at the end of the day, there isn't even going to be a sidewalk going from Church and Walker to this development. I coached Little League softball. I coached for Audubon, and I've coached for the last 8 years. Everything I do is for the kids. There's kids that go up and down the street nonstop. There's cars that fly up and down the street. We practice at Eske. I have little girls rolling up in bikes. That's not going to happen anymore because parents just simply aren't going to let their kids do that anymore. That's the benefit of living in this township, having a neighborhood like this. And at the end of the day, I think that there's plenty of land in the township to do things like this, but to jam 26 houses in this little area and have it impact the kids and the safety, and if God forbid something happens with cars flying up and down this road, if God forbid something happens to somebody in our community because of a decision that we all made together, it's going to be on us as a group, everyone in this room. So I think we really need to think long and hard about this, because jamming this many houses into an area like this is going to impact how the township does business, how people look at the township, and at the end of the day, whether it comes down to $1 or the kids and the community and how we look at things. So again, I realize that probably isn't going to do anything, but I really hope you think long and hard about that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Amanda Pizzutelli-Herb, and we are new, Pizzutelli-Herb. Okay, and I live at 549 Deerfield Drive. That backs up to Esky Park. We would be in prime view of this. I don't have as educated of a response as some of the attendees here today, but we just moved in at the end of September. We have a sign. It was the amenities, the beautiful Esky Park, the woods. My son hasn't had the opportunity to grow up and fully enjoy everything that maybe some of the other parents have. I don't want to be looking at, diggers and all the construction, hear all the noise, right out, the back of my property. I do have concerns about the displacement of the wildlife. There's foxes, there's deer, there's hawks, it would be a shame to lose that. So again, even though I'm not directly affected by Church Road, I fully understand the concerns about the traffic. And I just want to have on record that I am strongly opposed to this. I don't find a need for any homes to go back in that area. I've heard that it's been untouched for years, so I don't understand why the need now. And I don't feel like it's been really explained. Why is there the need for this development in the township?
It's called property rights. So anybody that has a piece of ground can come in and build on it under zoning. I mean, it's not, every property gets zoned in every municipality, and some of it sits for years untouched. Somebody decided to touch it. I mean, it's, as everything was built around it, so, there's more that's got to happen with this. This has got to go through subdivision and land development, and, tonight's the first step. So, I mean, that's the only answer I can give you. Somebody decided they wanted to build on it and acquired it. And they're able to do that if they meet all the rules and the regulations.
Just ask one more technical question. Sorry, I'm an engineer. Can't help it. So with regard to, and we've talked about it some tonight, with regard to 143-36, Section E, and you stated that in that ordinance there's a maximum lot size to be processed at 15 acres. The one that's under question here is 10.3 acres. Is there a minimum? We kind of asked it, but we didn't hear an answer. Is there a minimum either lot size or number of dwellings to be considered for a property? And the reason I'm asking is there is an adjacent property that actually just sold. It's right on the other side of the Pennsylvania water tower lot. It's a lot that faces Church Road prior to the houses on Walker Lane, and that's a long, skinny lot.
Yeah,
Our concern would be, could that be subdivided into 3 or maybe as many as 5 village house?
You need 8.5 acres, the minimum.
So it's a minimum of 8.5,
A maximum
of 15. Okay, I did
of
not see that
15.
in the ordinance. So.
Yeah, it's under 1A, tract area.
And Mr. Landis, the ordinance does not allow this to be built if it abuts any other residential property.
Okay, so that's a further restriction.
Yes,
So I don't have to stare out my kitchen window and watch somebody pick his nose.
correct. So if any of the property abuts another residential property, you can't have this use.
Okay, thank you very much.
My name is Donald Lee, family name Li, same place you can see. My address is 3031 Walker Lane. So basically, I have three concerns about the current situation. The first is the underground water, because my house suffers heavily from the basement water. Second is the traffic on Walker Lane. But my neighbors explained them pretty well, so I don't want to repeat them. And I'm telling you the third concern. The reason why my wife and I bought this house, well, 15 years ago we bought this house. At that time, we had three choices to make. One is in another town, which is about $60,000 less. The other is in Oaks, which is $69,000 less. And the reason why we bought this particular one was because of the backyard, because we really like it. It's, you know, reasonably decent sized, and the wilderness behind it. And right now, literally, when we cook, we can see deers roaming in that area, literally, and the rabbits hopping around, and occasionally foxes, etc. Now, if just this wilderness and the tranquility, etc., and won our heart, so we bought this house, ending up paying a lot more than we could, and paying more taxes. And now, if this is our, you know, biggest investment in our life, and so I feel it's unfair to me and to the neighborhood to potentially make the investment less valued. Thank you for your consideration.
Caracolis, 2015 Windsor Drive. I actually have two questions just for clarification because I'm not sure if it's clear to the people in the audience. So the first one is so I was here when the builder came and asked to change the zoning and asked for permission, and the board approved that they would change the zoning. Can you clarify, once that zoning is changed, can it be changed back?
Yes.
It can be changed back before development, before land development in this particular case.
You can always amend the zoning ordinance.
So you could switch it back to R2 from village housing, is the question?
You can always amend the zoning ordinance.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to make it clear because I wasn't sure.
Once a land development plan gets filed, though, that
Once
gets
it's-
grandfathered in.
Okay. And then the second one, just for clarification, because I have come to these meetings fairly regularly. Where do you advertise I know it's in the meetings and we put the notes out, but for the audience, can you say where we typically advertise for public comment when something is going to be changed?
Here's the proof of advertising.
It's the newspaper, correct?
Times Herald.
Times Herald. Okay, in the back. Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Delmater, we legally advertise in the Times Herald, but our agendas are posted online, and there's information on our Facebook and website about the agendas and what is going to be on them as well.
And the notices for these conditional use hearings are also on our website.
So that's just the legal advertisement, but there's other advertisements that go on. Thank you.
It depends, just on the advertising, depending on what is being held, there's different, like for a zoning amendment, which happened in June, it's advertised in the Times Herald twice, the township posts what they post on their website. The property also gets posted on a hearing or a zoning change, or some posting of the property typically. This was not a zoning map change, this was just a text, it added an additional use. So that got advertised twice in the Times Herald. This hearing and the hearing before it, that most of you were here, got advertised twice in the Times Herald. So there's always the legal advertising under state law, that's always required. And then the township does whatever they do on their social media site, on their webpage, and what's on the agenda. Any other public comment?
Hello, Janice Kearney, 565 Deerfield Drive. Kearney. I just wanted to say briefly, we are on the other side, our property is on 565 Deerfield. We're on the back of the bulb on this map. And our house would, the back of our house would face the back of those 6 or 7 houses on the back of this lot. We're not opposed to the use at all. It's a residential use, and quite frankly, the township garage is probably more of an imposition to us noise-wise and visually than these houses would be. Mr. Bronca is not looking to put in a factory or anything like that. So from a use perspective, we don't have a problem with that. The few issues that we do have would be stormwater and requesting a buffer that exists along the tree line now. And I understand that's all land development issues. Those will come up later on, and we can discuss those later. But I just wanted to state on the record that we didn't have an issue with the use at all. And again, as I said, I think it's less of an intense use than the township garage that's already there. I've also spoken to a couple of neighbors, one of whom had a few of the same issues that we had with stormwater runoff and buffering. He's out of town. He could not be here tonight. He's at 557, and that would be the White Sides. And again, all of the houses along where we live have the same issues that some of the people on Walker Lane have mentioned regarding stormwater runoff. My brother's a geologist. He's explained this to me many times, why our basement is full. Again, the water table is very high, there's a lot of bedrock, and as anybody knows who's trying to put in a swimming pool, there's a lot to blast through. So I know that the developer can't make things worse. I don't know how much better he can make them. But again, I think a lot of people have a concern about maybe 26 houses are going to make that a little worse. So, but that's the only comment I had. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to the rest of the agenda. I want to thank all the residents that came out this evening. This is the first step in a very long process. We will bring this issue back up again at our next meeting on September 5th. Hopefully all 5 board members will be here so that they can hear your comments as well. And it's very important to us when residents come out. We enjoy hearing from you. We're not used to having such large crowds, but it's very important to hear your feedback. So thank you for your time, and sorry you missed the preseason game.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3D on the agenda, we're going to review the Germantown Pike, Evansburg Road intersection study. And our traffic engineer has a lot of facts and data to go over.
Yes, good to see you all. Buckle in, this is going to be another hour. I'm teasing. Thank you. We can go through this rather quickly, and then I can take any questions you have. So I'll back up to why we conducted this study. This study was conducted as a result of the St. James Church land development, where they're building their community center across the street of Evansburg Road. As part of the conditions for that, we had some concerns with how the intersection functions at Evansburg Road and Germantown Pike. They agreed to help fund a study to look at improving the operation of that traffic signal. They're also providing pedestrian crossings south of the intersection of Germantown Pike. And we were trying to, with this study, evaluate what short-term and possible long-term improvements are needed at this intersection. Not that these were being caused by the land development of the community center itself, but existing issues as, we're promoting this. So, I don't know, I'm assuming all of you may have gotten a copy of our study. Study is essentially a 4-page letter report with a lot of attachments. We counted this intersection in April of this year for a 12-hour period. We looked at it from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to look at hour-by-hour movements of traffic at the intersection. The peaks were 7:15 to 8:15 in the morning for the peak hour of the morning rush. Midday was 12:45 to 1:45, and the evening rush hour from 5 to 6. As you may expect, traffic is heaviest eastbound and northbound, I believe, in the morning, southbound in the morning, and then northbound and westbound in the afternoon. We also found that under existing conditions, which the signal does not have currently, a westbound, so if you're going from Evansburg Park toward Collegeville on Germantown, that's westbound, it warrants a left turn lead phase because there is no separate left turn lane there. There's a very narrow shoulder adjacent to a cemetery, which some cars can sneak around, 1 or 2 cars, but if it's queued up further than that, they wait quite a bit. We also then looked at left turn lane warrants for the intersection. Our left turn lanes warranted at this location. One of the big things that we requested be done by St. James Church in their land development was to donate for future taking any of their ultimate right-of-way along their frontage on the east side of Evansburg Road, as well as along their frontage on the new property being developed. The reason we asked for that is in the township's Act 209 Study and Capital Improvement Plan, the provision of left turn lanes were a future improvement at that intersection. Under our analysis, those left turn lanes are warranted at the current time, and any construction of those left turn lanes would only improve the intersection operations. We also looked at things such as pedestrian crossings, pedestrian clearance times, those types of things, as well as the timing of the intersection itself. We reviewed crash data at the intersection. We obtained crashes there over a 5-year period. The last 5 years, there was about 14 crashes. 6 were angles. All the details are in the study. However, none of those crashes were found to be as a result of the signal itself, and sometimes that's noted in a police report. So what we came to the conclusion was, after we did all this analysis, is that first of all, the existing permit plan that PennDOT has for the intersection is missing some no pedestrian crossing signs across the northern leg of Evansburg Road. We should have those installed. And also there's a miscellaneous signal shown on the permit plan that's not there in the field, and it doesn't need to be there, and that is for a pedestrian crossing where those signs are missing. So that's just a cleanup detail if you did nothing to the rest of the plan. However, our recommendation is to install the phasing to allow the left turn, the westbound phase, to allow that approach to go first and get the left turns turning to go south on Evansburg Road. Also to modify pedestrian countdown signal heads for the 3 of the legs, they're pedestrian crossings. That allows pedestrians to more safely cross there. There are some ADA curb ramps and facilities at the intersection, but anything else to that should be done. There were recommendations 4 through 6 just have to do with the nuts and bolts of the intersection, how it should be retimed. Those are details for a signal plan, but those are optimizing the signal timings, taking what's out there today, optimizing them in conjunction with the left turn lead phase. Allowing a little additional time, more time for pedestrian crossing, that's adding 3 seconds. And one of the big the two last items in our recommendations are the bigger items. One is to install a video detection system. Now, the biggest bang for the buck you're going to get for the video detection system is when you have these other auxiliary lanes constructed, these left turn lanes themselves on Germantown Pike and one potentially on northbound Evansburg Road to shadow the one on southbound. There is a left turn lane on southbound Evansburg Road. When you have that thermal detection, the intersection will operate as a fully actuated signal. It will operate more on control and on demand than it does in a semi-actuated situation. However, if you put them in, there is some benefit today to it. There'll be more benefit when there's auxiliary lanes. And the last item is actually to have the township, pursue, and this is something you can do through grant funding, et cetera, along with your capital improvement plan, Act 209 fee money in this service area, to look at a future project to install the left turn lanes. Obviously, that is a big funding item. So how much does all this cost? Now, we didn't evaluate the details of installing the left turn lanes because we knew that that was bigger than this project, and that's probably a $500,000 to $1 million project at a minimum, okay? So what we did do is we looked at those other smaller recommendations about the retiming, adding some new conductor and signal heads to allow the advance of the left turn phase. If you do all those things, you're looking at a cost of about $11,000 to $12,000. The applicant, in this case, has not only given the money to the township to pay for what we're discussing tonight, but they've provided a $5,000 fee toward the improvement recommendation. So the out-of-pocket to the township is the balance of that $11,000 to $12,000. If you went ahead and you installed this thermal video detection to further enhance the intersection, that's the big nut. That costs about $30,000 itself. So the intersection would be about a $41,000 to $42,000 improvement. So that's what our findings are for the traffic study of this intersection at this time in our recommendations. And I don't know how you want to proceed from here, but if you have any questions, you can ask me.
Well, I don't think it's a surprise that the left turn lanes would be warranted. We've talked about that going in, and I think even the anecdotal information would identify that. I appreciate the study. I think that, I know we had identified this intersection as one of the areas of improvement for our goals this year. And I think with the $41,000 investment, recognizing that it may be years before we can get the fully actuated intersection with the left turn lanes, $41,000 would make a significant improvement at this point in time.
Casey, what are the chances, so PennDOT's already in the preliminary design phase for the new loop road, I guess you could call it, or new bypass road?
The connector from Germantown to Ridge?
Right.
Yeah.
Would they consider this as a part of a larger scheme to kind of tag on?
I think that you would be pressing your luck with that. I mean, you don't get anything if you don't ask, right? So, I mean, we can always ask, but based on experience, I don't think that they're going to stretch their project because they have project dollars donated down near the bridge. However, what I do think is that this is a great candidate, and it's a much simpler project that would go under more of an HOP type of project phase. What we're doing down at Crawford and Eagleville, that is a complex project because we had to follow a PennDOT delivery process because of the cost of that project. This is more like if a developer came in and was constructing on the corner and they were adding left turn lanes, and it goes through the PennDOT highway occupancy permit process. But depending on either one of those processes, you could go after multimodal fund grants or things of that nature to help. And so the town use its dollars as a match toward.
You talked too long, your battery died.
Can you believe that? 10 minutes, that wasn't too bad.
Casey, so the next step would be to file this report with PennDOT?
Yeah, so the next step, I mean, there's two ways we can go about it. If we could take this study as a supplement to revising the plan. So we could revise the plan itself and attach this study and submit it to PennDOT for review in that fashion. Okay, so they would have everything at once. The other option is to just take the study and submit it to PennDOT and say, we would like to do this. Do we have your blessing? Do you have any comments? Do you have any suggestions before we, spend any money modifying the plan? Either way is, you can't go wrong either way. This is a pretty minor thing in the whole scheme of things. It's not like we're designing the lanes today and submitting the project.
Casey, Germantown's a county road. What are the chances of approaching the county and trying to partner with the county on the project?
The county has a separate pot of funding to go to things. I can certainly talk to Matt Edmond at the county and tell him what we're trying to do here and see if he steers me in a direction toward one of their grant opportunities. Absolutely, Patrick. Yep. And I'm assuming you're saying that toward the larger improvement project, yeah, the bigger improvement, yes.
In the meantime, I'd recommend that we submit the plan to PennDOT and tell them that we'd like to move forward with it.
Okay. So what we'll do is we will take the digital plan of the permit plan, clean up the stuff that I said is erroneous today, make the timing changes, make the phasing changes, and submit it with this report, and then we'll go from there. And hopefully we can get this all wrapped up this fall and it's in place. Okay?
Thank you, Casey. Certainly have the heavy traffic up there in that part of the township, and any little bit would certainly help. Okay, item 3E, consideration of resolution 2019-26, updating the township's emergency operations plan. And our township manager has that information.
Thank you, Mrs. Ekman. The fire marshal, every 2 years, the township needs to update its emergency operations plan and submit it to the county, even if there aren't any major changes that take place. Before you is the updated plan. Again, there are no major changes that took place. Primarily what we're updating are information pertinent to the 2019 data, which involves staff, contact listings, who we're going to contact in the event of emergencies, what type of vendors we have on our list. So it's really just an update of that. Obviously, this hasn't been submitted in 2 to 3 years, so we've had new staff come on, we've had a new fire marshal come on, so there's all new contact information that needs to be submitted. And in order to do that, there's a formal process to submit this. So it has to be approved by resolution at a public meeting, and then the supervisors all have to sign the promulgation that's attached to it. So it's really a formal process that we have to do. It really isn't changing our emergency operation plan, but it's just updating the information that's in it, the contact information.
I would make a motion to approve by resolution the updated emergency plan of the township.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions from the audience on the motion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, consent by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passed, 3-0. Next item, having another hearing. This would be to accept a public comment on the Comcast cable franchise agreement renewal. You will recall, 2 months ago maybe, we did the Verizon hearing. Now we are moving into Comcast.
To the Comcast, correct. And in the same manner as we did the Verizon, we will go through the same process for this. It's called a hearing. Obviously, there's no court reporter here or anything, but it's a chance to solicit public comment about our Comcast franchise agreement. So I'll go through the written portion here. So good evening. This is a public hearing of the Lower Providence Township Board of Supervisors regarding cable franchise renewal for Lower Providence Township. This public hearing is pursuant to Section 626 of the Federal Cable Act, which sets forth the process for franchise renewal. The township's current franchise with Comcast actually expired at the end of 2016, and the township is in the process of renewing that franchise. This public hearing is part of the preliminary portion of franchise renewal in which the township reviews the cable operator's past performance and identifies the township's future cable-related community needs. As such, as part of the public hearing, we invite comments from any citizens who wish to speak regarding either or both the aforementioned subjects. Franchise renewal is the best opportunity for municipalities to assert their rights with respect to their cable operators and to obtain important benefits in return for granting the cable operators the right to use the public right-of-ways. These benefits include a state-of-the-art cable system now and in the future, strong customer service standards, free services to community facilities, better reporting requirements from the cable operator, maximized franchise fees, an educational and government channel, capital support for active EG channels, legal protections of the right-of-ways, and better mechanisms to enforce the franchise agreement. These are just some of the potential benefits available through the franchise renewal, and then citizens may address these items or any other cable-related items that are important to them. We'll now open up the hearing to any citizen for comments. So at this point, if there are any citizens who have any comments about Comcast, we know Comcast, for Verizon was a different situation. They were relatively new. It was the first time we were renewing that franchise. Comcast has been established here, their system in the township. So, you know, it's a little different scenario. And I think I had mentioned that the last time when I spoke about Verizon. But if there are any comments, now's the time. And hearing none, we can close the hearing then.
Okay, so we're done with that finally.
And we'll move forward. The next meeting, we'll present, which has been advertised, the ordinance to renew the franchise agreement with Comcast.
Okay,
So that'll be at the next meeting.
excellent. Thank you, Don. Okay, we have a few announcements this evening. The upcoming meetings that may be of interest to residents. The Library Board of Trustees will meet on August 19th at 7 p.m. That's over in the library, of course. Park and Recreation Board will have their monthly meeting August 20th at 7 p.m. That's usually held in the boardroom here. That's open to the public. The Zoning Hearing Board will hold their meeting on August 22nd at 7 p.m. And the Planning Commission meeting for August 28th has been canceled, Mike? Yes, so that is canceled. There was nothing on the agenda, so they were canceled. Comments and other business?
I would welcome Willie again. Thank you for sticking around, Mr. Cavallo. Thank you. We don't always go 3 hours, but, you know, as Annie had said, sometimes we're talking about somebody's fence, and, you know, we talked about a berm tonight, but other times, like tonight, we have important issues before us that really warrant a lot of public input and comment, and that means a later night. So thank you for being here and welcome, and look forward to the year ahead. And thank you, Annie.
Elliot?
Yeah, there's a lot of neat and interesting stuff that's going on. First, I'd like to thank John and Lonnie and Tim for completing the paving program in the township this year. We pave about 3 miles worth of roads over the course of the summer. Obviously, I know it was a disruption to the residents in the township that were affected by those paving schedules, but it looks great, and it'll be, in the long run, I think over the last 6 years, we've paved almost 13 miles of our 92 miles of roads. So the paving plan is really come a long way under your leadership, so thank you. I think the Collegeville Bridge repairs have now been completed, and that is open? Yes. Yep. Collegeville Bridge is open, and we anticipate Eagleville Road being open by the end of next week.
I was down there, I'm 95% gone. I asked the guys, are you on schedule, but they didn't want to say.
The latest report we got said next week, so.
Yeah, by next Friday. So,
There's not much left to do.
Yeah.
Very minor stuff.
yeah, so we're looking forward to the traffic being free-flowing. The Business Development Committee is hosting our open house for the supervisors on September 24th at Arcola. And we've had a lot of business-related activity here in the township. Dunkin' Donuts has torn down the old building and is in the process of building their new building at Ridge and Trooper. Redner's is still moving along and is anticipated to open end of September, early October.
Third week of October.
Okay, so October. Lido looks like it's opening in the beginning or middle of September.
First week of September.
First week of September. This is the construction on the Starbucks in the Acme Shopping Center is moving along?
Don't have time on that.
Okay, yeah, I see work out there, so it's looking well. And then I saw, Bill, today you posted that we have another new business moving into the township in Clean Logic down at Monroe Boulevard.
Yeah, it's actually, but, it's a company that came in from California. So it's nice little, it's not a lot of employees, but it does fill up some space. And it's accepted now.
And did I read the article that they said they chose this township for a lot of the attributes we have, and they're moving their distribution center from New Jersey to here?
Yes.
So that's great. And the hotel in the Audubon Square is going to be opening, do you have a date on that, Mike? In about a month. So we have a lot of new businesses opening up here. And finally, the Audubon School Subcommittee that Peter and I serve on with Don, we've met twice with representatives from the school board. We have a third meeting planned for August 30th. We're continuing to explore ways in which the township can gain operational control of the school district site or the Audubon School site, keep it intact and operate it as a community center. So progress is coming along here. We look to have some more formal ideas exchanged by that meeting. So, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. It's been a very busy summer. A lot of inconvenience and delays with the road work, but sure is nice to drive on North Park with a nice smooth surface and all our township roads that are now like Sunnyside and has that new piece paved. It does make a difference getting to and from, so thank you all for your efforts in the summer, working very hard. Okay, we'll have the courtesy of floor right now. Any public comment? Anything? Just come forward. We'd love to hear from you. You stuck it out this long? You must have. Okay, hearing none, then I will call for the adjournment. Our next meeting will be September 5th, and we'd love to see you all again.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A motion, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, call for the vote. All in favor, consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, meeting adjourned. Thank you. Drive safely.